Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about how variables work in Python. So essentially, just to explain the concept first, a variable is a way that we would store data in a program. So I've got an example up here. Num is equal to 1000. So um, essentially what this is doing is when we define a variable, a portion of the memory in the computer is going to be reserved for whatever value you decide to put in that memory. So in the example here, num is equal to 1000. Essentially what this is doing is 1000 is going to be stored in a certain portion of the computer's memory and is going to be referred to with the identifier num, which is obviously an abbreviation of number. So the syntax on how you would do something like that is you'd have the name or identifier of whatever variable you'd want to call it, and then you'd follow it up by an equals sign, and then whatever data value you want to store in the variable. So this is quite a fundamental concept in really all programming languages because obviously when you're writing a program, you're going to need to store and manipulate data at some point. So it's quite a foundational concept. So the example that I just showed here, um, we're storing the value 1000. So say for instance, I could now print out that value. If I said print num, you can probably expect that it's going to print out 1000. So you can see here. And basically what it's doing is it's just referencing whatever value is stored within that data location in the memory. So, we could manipulate this. We could change it to 500, for instance, and then it will print out 500. So anyone who is familiar with maths would know that what we're doing here, this piece of data is an integer or a whole number, but there are other types of data as well. So say for instance, if we wanted to store a number with a decimal, we could do, let's just say num2 is equal to 5.7, just for instance. Essentially this data type would be called a float, which is referring to a floating point number, so anything with a decimal point. So again, if you're familiar with maths, you'd understand that a number with a decimal is often called a floating point number. So there are other data types as well. So we could have, for instance, string. Now, a string is basically just text. It's anything which is contained within these quotation marks. So I can essentially type anything in here. And all of this will be valid. You can see that there are numbers in here as well, but it will be stored as a string data type. So anything within quotation marks is a string. So we can just put an example in there. And then the final one is a Boolean. So essentially a Boolean is any data type which is true or false. So just as an example, we could say, let's just do something like this, or we can make that false. And the key thing to note here with a Boolean is that when you're typing false, for it to be recognized as a keyword, you have to have a capital letter followed by lowercase letters. So say for instance, we couldn't do that. You can see that the syntax highlighting doesn't put it in orange. So it's not recognized as legitimate Boolean value, and if we were to run that, it would just give an error. So it's the same for true. If we did something like that, if we did something like that, it's not going to be recognized as a legitimate value. You have to do a capital letter followed by lowercase letters. So those are four main data types. There are more, but at the moment that's just out of the scope of this lesson. But there's a few more things to talk about. So obviously what's happening here is all of these values are, again, they're being stored in locations in the memory, and so we can then perform different calculations on them. Obviously here we're just outputting the numbers to the shell. So there are plenty of other things that we can do with them, but what you also have to note is that obviously the names that I put here, they're quite descriptive. So a common error that people would make is they just put a random variable name, because you could realistically put anything as the variable name. I could just put some random text, and this will be valid, but it's not descriptive. It doesn't mean anything, and so the code is not going to be clear. It's not going to be descriptive. So anyone that's wanting to read or edit the code, they wouldn't really understand what this means. So when you're writing code, typically you want to make numbers which are variable names which are descriptive of whatever that thing is. So obviously, the ones I put here are somewhat descriptive. We're not really using these in any context at the moment, but you could change this to something a bit more descriptive of what it actually means. So that's about it, really, for now anyway. So that's about all we have time for. So thank you for watching.